met me at a networking meeting, and I explained to her about when she told me she was half Sierra Leonean. And the reason I asked, she pronounced my name Iyamide exactly right, because I get all sorts of pronunciation from Iyamide to Iyamide to all kinds of things. But when I gave her my card, it said Iyamide, and I said, "You pronounced my name right." She said, "That's my mother was from Sierra Leone." Iyatunde, yes? Iyatunde, right? And then I booked her and said, Krio Descendants Union, you have to blah, blah, blah. And the rest is history, as they say. So I belong to the Krio Descendants Union and the Krios.com. And it's the Krios.com collaboration, but there are people from both organizations here. And it was my joining those organizations, initially Krio Descendants Union, that made me reawakened my urge to, learn about Creole history and all that. I used to like history from 1 and 2 and 3, and the school in Sierra Leone, and then they stream you to either science or arts. And I went to the science. I think my late dad thought I'd follow his career into medicine, but I was so squeamish, so I didn't do it. But I did go into science. But history has come back, and I'm glad about that. So what I'm going to do today is just read something that I've written on childhood memories. I grew up in Sierra Leone until I was 15 before coming here. So it's childhood memories, visits to families in villages. Now I realize that there's some non-Sierra Leoneans here. So when you hear us talk about Creoles, it's the ex-slaves and free men who the British resettled in Freetown. They were from Africa, the Caribbean, they were African American from the Caribbean and Africans along the coast of Africa. Okay, childhood memories are precious. I have fond memories of growing up in Sierra Leone. My parents were Creoles, and we belonged to that unique ethnic group made up of the descendants of African American, Caribbean and African ex-slaves and free men who the British resettled in Freetown, the province of Freedom. From this motley mix of returnees evolved our Creole heritage, a melting pot of different cultures and traditions. Some Creoles were very westernized and teasingly called aristo from aristocrat. Yeah? I was called this at secondary school when I would take a homemade packed lunch rather than buy bread and akara, a deep-fried bean cake sold by a woman called Adama. You didn't have that. In those days, for aristo Creoles, eating cooked street food was a definite no-no. However, with time, I dared to taste Adama's akara, and most definitely did not look back. I have memories of our annual New Year's Day visits to my mom's family in Godrich, and on Sundays to my dad's relatives in Kissi, where we attended church. These two villages were a good stretch from Smart Farm, where we lived. And after my dad had enough long-haul driving, we decided we could access God at the Anglican Cathedral in town. So we changed churches, right? Godrich and Kissi, like other villages, were founded by the British to resettle the liberated Africans. These were slaves freed en route to slavery in the Americas, and they came mostly from Nigeria. They were mostly Yorubas. So they influenced the Creole heritage quite a bit. Our visits to the villages were the few times I actually entered a typical Creole boat house. These were colorfully painted wooden houses. I think there's when you look around, there's a, you want to hold that up? Yeah, the picture. Yeah, these were colorfully painted wooden houses built decades ago with a unique architectural style brought by the African Americans from Nova Scotia, who based the houses on those they had seen in America and the Caribbean. I remember going to America with my mom at age 12, and I saw very similar houses in Washington. But by then, I was just saying, wow, we're getting Australian and Freetown, but it really, I didn't know the history behind it. But it was the Nova Scotian slaves who were returned. They built these houses in Sierra Leone, and it's still a legacy today. Now, my aunts and cousins at both villages would typically wear a unique Creole dress known as print. This is it, although it's half complete. That's what Isabella has on, that's what Alice has on, and Isabella, one of them spoke about the embroidery, so it's known as the print. Where am I? Would typically wear a unique Creole dress known as print with matching head tie, which I haven't worn. This is the bottom thing, but it does have a head tie to go with it. And what's known as carpet slippers, the look-alike tapestry pumps, which probably had Victorian roots. Now let me see if I have a picture of that for those that don't know what it is. Oh, yeah, that's the, yeah. She's going to show you how it starts. That's how it begins, and it ends up like this. Slippers, pumps, yeah? That's what they normally wear with this. Yeah? Everybody can see that? And you have to have special skills to do that. Marking, it's called. And I think Isabella's grandmother did it, used to do it. Yeah. So that's typically a Krio, you know, shoe thing. And I really think it originated, I believe it originated from Victorian ages or something. So those aunts some of them would wear the typical thing with the print and everything. However, in Kisi, one stout and cheerful aunt seemed to wear nothing other than Western dress, and she always had a brown felt hat under that sun. I don't know why, but she always wore a felt hat. I love trips to Godrich on New Year's Day, which encompass the common Creole tradition of visiting and communicating with the dead. Not that I am morbid, but rather I would say I was intrigued. We would visit the cemetery where my maternal grandfather, who I never met, and other extended family members were buried. This was a day when cemeteries all over Freetown were transformed into picnic spots, with many families on deck chairs sharing food and drink. I think they stopped short of turning the place into a disco. I never heard music, but I'm told that they sometimes took music. Of course, our Aristo Creole family were not that common, so we didn't take music. Tradition dictated that the favorite drink of the departed, which always seemed alcoholic and strong, would be poured onto the grave by family elders, who would then communicate with what I could only assume were the spirits of the dead. One particular aunt always looked like she had had quite enough before we got there, as she would sway from side to side as she came to welcome us. Every family has its black sheep. The elders would then throw kola nuts into the grave, and depending on whether these fell upwards or not, the ancestors were deemed to have given their blessing or not. I think we were blessed, as the rest of the day was always enjoyably spent feasting and chatting with extended family in their Creole bodos. I do hope their historic wooden house, that bastion of Creole heritage, still exists. Thank you.